Well, friends, here we are. What has happened to our lives? What has happened to our lives? Welcome to our table. My husband is coming because I said you're coming.
Yep.
We have all the things to talk about tonight. So first of all, my name's Allison. It's my husband Brian. If you're joining us for the first time, we started this little broadcasting a few weeks ago. I don't know.
Yep.
The desire to talk about the things that we talk about with people at our dining room table. And believe it or not, we've had a lot of conversations about our topic tonight at our dining room table, probably because we do a lot of talking about marriage.
I didn't know what you were saying next. Because we do a lot of talking about marriage at our, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
you're leading there.
Anyways, we also were doing these on Tuesday nights, and we're going to start doing on Monday nights because we just are. So we were trying to mix business and personal, and it was kind of not working.
Yeah.
So
we're just separated.
Yeah. So now on Monday nights, you get all the things about family and life and purpose and dreaming and marriage and
all the things,
babies and making babies and all the things.
That's coming up next.
So we're talking about sex tonight. First of all, we're doing a giveaway.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, show them what we're giving away.
All right. So before I show this book, there's two books, but these books had a massive effect on our marriage, the way we communicate, the way it just puts a really great frame around communication and all the hot topics, including sex within a marriage and things that sometimes go unsaid, even though they're really important. And it helps prioritize certain things in our marriages that we should be prioritizing. So it's called For Couples Only. It's a 2-box set. I don't know if the screen's flipped or not, but there's one book called For Men Only and one called For Women Only. And the cool thing about them, so the one that's called For Men Only is the one men are supposed to read.
Sure.
And as you read it, you learn about your wife.
Mm-hmm.
So they've done studies on thousands of people. It's written by a couple, Shanti and Jeff Feldham. You can see the names there. And when he wrote this book, it became so popular, they wrote the same book for women. But the way we teach you to read it, or one thing we do in our couples retreats is we actually say, read the book about yourself first, and then go through and make highlights and take notes, because there's some things that might apply a lot more to you than, just the average person that they took, the statistics are about, and then switch books, and then it has a lot more meaning. So this is a book we highly recommend. If you don't win in the drawing tonight, I still highly suggest you get online and purchase these books. You can buy them in a box set like this, and it's almost the same price as just buying one of the books. I think if you buy one on Amazon, they're like $9 or $10. If you buy the box set, it's like $12 or $13. And we don't make anything off these books. We've never met these people. We've never talked to them. It's just something that we really, really believe in, and something that we tell a lot of people about, and we give a lot of those away to people that sit around this table with us, because it's changed our marriage and a few other things. But it's single-handedly, probably, if you point to any one book that's changed our marriage more than any of them, it's probably that one.
True. So how do you win it, babe?
So you can win it by sharing the video right now. So if you share the video on your page, we're going to go through and look at all the names on all the shares. We're going to put them into a randomizer, and we're going to draw a name, maybe more than one.
We'll see. Yeah, I guess depending on how people share it.
How about we say this? For every 100 shares, we'll draw a book. We'll draw a book set. So
write that down. For every 100 shares.
100 shares, we'll give one away. We get 200 shares, we'll give 2 away. So just depending on how many shares it gets, I think that's because I just know if it's me, I'm not going to share it. If there's only 400 or 500 people that have shared it, I'm not going to share it. I'm like, the odds are impossible. There's no way.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sure.
So that way, if you share it, and then we're going to, I say we draw tomorrow.
Let's draw tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So that gives you guys 24 hours if you're not watching this live. But we talked about maybe doing it a week from now, but we want you guys to run out and get these books. If some of the things we talked about tonight are some things that maybe sticky points in your marriage, or you're having communication issues, or whatever it might be, we want you guys to go out and get these books to start getting better as soon as possible. So we didn't want to have you wait a week to see if you were going to win it. And then you might, if you don't win, then you're like, I'm not going to buy it now. It's been too long. I forgot what they said. So we'll draw tomorrow night, this time tomorrow night. How about right before we go live tomorrow night?
Or after, either one.
Or after. Okay, tomorrow night.
Sorry, it's going to be double sounds for a second. Okay. So again, the names of the book are, if you look on Amazon, it's actually called For Couples Only.
For Couples Only. Looks like this.
And inside For Couples Only is 2 books, For Men Only and For Women Only. So you're gonna love them. Okay.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Let's do the thing. All right, here's the deal. If you are my grandmother, either of my grandmothers, or my mom, stepdad, Brian's parents, it's just better if you don't watch.
Is it though?
I don't know. Probably not. We're not talking about anything like.
Here's the thing about sex, guys. Yeah. Sex is one of these things. It's such a. Is it a hot topic?
It's like faux pas.
It is kind of faux pas, but also
like
it's something that we honestly believe it's something that can be the most incredible thing in the world, and it's everywhere in our world, right? So it's the thing that is everywhere. Yet, as a child growing up in church, you're taught to fear it, right? And so it's this topic of like when we tell people that they need to talk about sex more, couples almost blush and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess so. And we're like, wait a minute, y'all have sex, right? Well, yeah. We'll talk about it more. Like that's a thing, right? So it's one of those things. It's not something to be embarrassed about. It's not something that you should be ashamed of. Our culture, because of the way, depending on how you grow up, our parents want us to fear it because they don't want us, they
don't want to be grandparents.
They don't want to be grandparents when you're 16 years old, right? So one of the things that speaks the most to kids is fear, right? So why not make them afraid of it? Well, then as you get into adulthood and as you get married, and this affects women especially even more than men in a lot of ways, but you have this weird fear around marriage, and like you're supposed to do it, you're obligated, but at the same time, you don't really want to talk about it because, you're supposed to fear it your whole life. So there's just this unhealthy relationship with it, right?
Kaylee, I'm very proud of you. She said she shared it to her page and she wanted to put all the monkey emojis with covering eyes. You could have.
Yeah.
But why are we so scared to talk about it, right? Like, what is that about? I don't know. So back to what he said, I think when you grow up with this mindset of sex is bad, and if you may not have had this experience, but, when you live in the Bible Belt, that's what you grow up believing. Then it's in your brain that it's bad. And when you do it outside of marriage, it is bad. And then you get into a covenant of marriage and all of a sudden you still have this thought process that even though you know that it's not true, that sex was bad, so it is bad, right? Definitely something I struggled with, and I didn't know it. It's not that that's what I was thinking, but still there's all these underlying things that I kind of needed to heal from and work through when it came to having a healthy sexual relationship. Here's the thing, sex is a gift. It is one of God's greatest gifts to a married couple. And in a covenant, it is truly that. It should be and feel like a gift. But because it's such a powerful gift, you also have to consider how the enemy wants to steal from it, right? Because we have an enemy who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And if he can take something that God has said this is good and make it feel bad, he absolutely will, over and over and over again. And we're going to talk about a lot of the areas that we have either struggled with when it comes to sex, or that we know other couples struggle with a lot when it comes to sex. So first of all, it's not a dirty thing. We don't have to hide our eyes when we're talking about it within the relationship of marriage. It's okay. And it should be talked about. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying you need to go talk to your girlfriends about things that you are not happy about, but with other couples who believe the same things that you do, I believe it is a great thing to talk about sex. I think it's healthy. I think it's encouraging. Not details, none of that, but it is such an important part of your marriage. So let's talk a little bit about the books and the insights that you and I both got. Like there's just one chapter that's about sex. It's just all about sex.
Well, it's funny because at the beginning of the men's book, in the intro, it actually says, you've probably already skipped ahead to the sex chapter. And if you have, that's okay. But if you haven't, let it be in its place in the book because there's a reason that they put it in the middle versus the very beginning. But here's the incredible thing about what really opened our eyes about sex in the context that they frame it in the book. So men, and here's the thing, we're going to generalize some tonight because I'm going to speak on me and she's going to speak on her. We have found through doing these marriage retreats and talking to lots of married couples, we have found that this role is sometimes reversed. Sometimes the way I'm going to describe the way I think about sex, sometimes women feel that way and sometimes men feel the way that she feels. And that's fine. I mean, usually within a marriage, there's one person that is the more visual, imaginative, thinking about you sexually all the time. And then there's another person that's a little more grounded and not quite as much that way. So when I'm speaking in generalities, if you're a guy watching this and you're going, I'm not that way at all, it's okay. It's just, I'm speaking from personal experience, obviously. But within the book, in the sex chapter, it talks about how men are very visual creatures. And through all these studies they've done, and again, it's not all men, but usually for the most part, men are the ones that are the visual creatures. So example, they talk about how many times a day men think about sex. And I'm going to mess the number up when you read the book. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way you're supposed to read the book is the way we tell people to read it is you read one chapter at a time. After you read that chapter, you come together as a couple. You highlight or take any notes as to things that you have questions about your spouse, because you're essentially reading about your spouse. And you ask these questions in a completely non-judgmental way just to get clarity, because now you have a reference into their mind that is not your spouse. It's thousands and thousands of other people. But now it starts to give credibility to the way they are, why they are, right? Or why they are the way they are. So we came together.
I'm trying, y'all. And
Allie said, I have a question. She goes, it says that men think about sex on average, and I'm going to mess the number up, but it's like 693 times per day. And I said, okay. And she goes, is that right? Again, non-judgmental. She's reading about, thousands of men, not just her husband. I said, yeah, that's probably right. She's like, wow, how? Like, explain to me how you think about it that much. And I go, well, babe, when you get up in the morning and you've got that tank top on, you wore to bed, and your boobs hanging out of it, and you think you're looking all rough, like I'm already thinking about your naked body, and it's warm and it's snuggled up next to me, so I'm thinking about it then. And then you get out of bed to walk in and turn on the shower, and I see you walking in front of me, and I'm thinking of it again. And then you get undressed to get in the shower, and then I'm thinking of it again because I'm looking at you naked, looking sexy, even though you don't think you look great at all because you just got out of bed. And then I bring you coffee into the shower, and I get to see you again, and I'm thinking about it again. So I kind of explain how I get there that many times a day, right? And then she's like, okay, well, I mean, that's really good to know. I had no idea. And I said, okay, now on the flip side of that, because I just read the chapter about that as well on her. And I said, for women, it says you only think about sex 6 to 10 times a day. Is that accurate? And she was like, yeah. And that might even be low some days, or high some days. I'm like, really? Explain that to me, please. Again, non-judgmentally, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, the female mind. And she's like, well, babe, I don't know. And I go, okay, example, the other night we were going on date night and I wore the jeans that you like, and you slapped me on the butt and said, man, your butt looks great in those jeans as we walked out the door. Were you thinking about sex? And she goes, no, I was just thinking about how your butt looked great in those jeans. And I go, oh man, we're so different. Because if I compliment her on her butt in jeans, I'm already imagining things that are going to happen. If that makes any sense. Women, if this is new to you, if I'm explaining something that you can't fathom because she couldn't at the time, it's just how we're wired. It's how God made us. It's the reason we are. But that was something that she just couldn't get her head around. And I couldn't understand that when she compliments me physically, that it doesn't immediately mean that she's thinking about sex. Because even though it sounds shallow when I say, well, when I compliment my wife, I'm thinking about sex, it's just how I'm wired. Like I'm thinking about it a lot because she's really beautiful. And I think she's, super hot and sexy and all the things. And so, yeah, I think about it a lot. So, and we're going to get a little more into, there's other things that play into this, hormone imbalances. And, we live in a world where because of all this junk that we eat and all of this, it can screw up so many other things. And so sometimes when we're describing some of these things, you might think, oh, that's not me at all. Like I never think that way. We'll talk a little bit about that, but that's kind of the insight to these books and what they do. And they also give all kinds of other insights. Men think in complete screens, right? Like we can have a whole computer screen up. We think on something, we click it out. Women do windows. They might have 10, 12 windows popped up at one time. So you talk about that and it just really gives us cool reference as to how you can communicate and talk through that stuff.
Baby, you did great.
Well, I knew you were distracted doing that, so I was trying to cover.
Did you not have it?
Huh.
Oh, we just had some inappropriate comments. I took care of it.
Oh, we did?
Yeah. They were all like, are y'all blocking out? I'm like, I'm trying. Yeah, I got taken care of.
I guess when you put sex in the title of something, you're going to have the weirdos come out.
That's
Sorry
good.
about that, guys.
We got it. It's fine. Okay. I know that whatever you said was great, but don't know what
your head. I know you were doing things.
I know.
I was just talking about these books.
Did you talk about Windows?
I did.
Okay.
At the end, I did briefly.
Like I could talk about it too?
Yeah. I just led right into it. So now you talk about Windows.
I blocked you.
It might be an old comment. There's 48 other comments.
Oh, that's an old comment. I did. Okay. That's right. I saw it on my.
I mean, when you dump in your name, probably shouldn't be allowed on
It's not a real username. Okay, so I think one of the things that we had to, okay, first of all, we have 4 kids. We've had 3 foster babies. We've been married for 15 years almost. Like, there are times when you're like, you know, like we have a lot going on. And to prioritize sex and to also make it something where we both feel fulfilled and something that we want to do. There's so many moving parts.
Right.
For one, you're thinking about it all the time. I'm not ever thinking about it for the most part.
Right.
You know, like this many times in a day.
Well, here's what's funny about what she just said. You're thinking about it all the time, and I'm hardly ever thinking about it. In a lot of marriages, that if that had been said,
then you feel like crap.
I feel like crap because I feel like pervert.
Yeah, or you
and then I feel
crap.
like my wife. I don't turn my wife on at all
Right.
because she never thinks about sex,
Yes.
and that's what we have found through talking to so many couples. When that exact thing is said, that's actually how we are made and how we're
Yes.
wired.
Yeah.
We're going to talk tonight about how you can tip those scales a little bit.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that's just the truth of it. For the most part, most couples, women don't think about it a lot. Men think about it a lot. We're made to feel like perverts in the society that we live in.
Yeah.
She's made to feel like she's not enough because she doesn't think about
Right.
it as much as we do, right?
Well, and just body image too, like our image as women and what the ridiculous like things that we think
The
we have
bar
to
that
live
you
up
feel like
to.
you have to meet because of what's on
so
TV
let's talk
and
about
lots
that.
of movies.
Let's talk about porn for a minute and how detrimental that is to your sex life in general. For one, here's the deal. This is not something that we struggle with currently.
Right.
Well, we can talk a little bit about just our experiences with it in the past. But if I knew that he was, here's the thing, porn in our society, it's fine, right? I mean, wouldn't you say that that's what our culture says?
Yeah.
Like our culture says, whatever.
Well, porn is more prevalent now than it's ever been, ever. It's easier to get than ever. We joke all the time. So we do these orientation church classes in our youth group at church where we, get new youth leaders in and we talk about all these hot topic subjects that kids are going to bring up, but then also that we're of the understanding we live in a world where adults, even great church-going adults, it's something they might struggle with. So we talk about pornography a lot and how when we were growing up, pornography was something you kind of had to work for.
Yeah.
Or be creative to find. Like we had to wait till my buddy's dad, who had a Playboy, went to bed, and then we had to sneak into his office and pick the lock on his drawer and find it. And so it was this whole thing, right? Well, now, literally, sometimes we're scared that our daughter, 3-year-old, that has a little bit of a lisp and says T or F instead of T. So when she says fire truck, it sounds like fire or something else. She might say the wrong thing to Alexa, and something might pop up on our computer screen. That we're not, Alexa just activated because I said her name. Don't say that name anymore. Especially when we're talking about this topic. But she might accidentally say something that all of a sudden pops up bad things on our screen because that's how easy it is to find.
Yeah.
We have to be in the room and have all these search engine things on our kids' computers because, tonight, me and Luke were doing his homework. He's doing a report on Abraham Lincoln. And we watched a YouTube video about Abraham Lincoln. And the next one that popped up was some bikini girls. Celebrating 4th of July. And we're like, cool. So, obviously got out of that, but it's just everywhere. And so because it's everywhere, it's so easy for men we talked about physical creatures, visual, imaginative, all of that.
Yes.
When that stuff pops up, it's very easy to just not look away for a little while. Right. And that's kind of how it starts. And then the next time you just kind of secretly watch it in a place where nobody sees. And it's so easy to hide delete your search engine history and do all of that. I mean, it's really easy to hide it in the world we live in, but it's so unhealthy because not only for her does it put things in my head that are not fair to her because it's not her. And then for her, now she's trying to live up to this thing that she doesn't even know what it is because I'm doing it secretly or watching it secretly.
But I know it's not realistic.
It's definitely not
like,
realistic.
right? Like, not ever going to happen. But,
right. So we're just big advocates. We say all that to say we're big advocates of there's a lot of fun, creative things you can do within your marriage to make sex really fun and
so
all
much
those
fun
things.
Stuff.
But pornography is never one of them.
No.
We're not advocates. I mean, if you read top 10 ways to spice up your sex life on any kind of Google search, you'll find places where it says start watching porn together. Don't do that. It invites sin into your soul and into your heart in a way that God never intended. And it's not something that's healthy for us as men to see, because then it creates this expectation level that's unrealistic. And for women, then it puts this expectation of something that they're not created to live up to. And so it's just unhealthy. Don't do that. If it's something that you do now, absolutely run from that. That's something that we just are huge believers that whether you're doing it in secret or doing it together, you've got to turn your back to that immediately.
Anyways, I don't know. We actually did not plan to talk about that at all, but
that is not written down. But we do feel very strongly about that.
Yes. So one of the things I wanted to say though is, when you're talking about a healthy sexual relationship in marriage, then, for me, for one, if you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, which means I'm a perfectionist and I have a hard time turning my brain off. It just runs all the time. And that's really bad when it's time to go to bed and he's like, hey, and the way the book explains it is like you have computer tabs open. Like, how many windows do you have open right now? There's approximately 26.
Well, the way it describes it, men think in full screen.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know about you guys watching, but this is exactly how I am. So I go full dedication to whatever I'm on in that moment. So if I'm working on work stuff, then I'm all in. I can do it. And then when something else comes up, boom, I'm all in on it. And when someone else, it's why Allie knows to quit talking to me if my head's in my phone.
Oh yeah.
Because I can't listen and focus on another thing at the same time. Where women, the way it describes it, it's like you guys have a bunch of windows popped up on the computer. So there might be 9 windows up at a time, and you're battling all of them or trying to put out fire. So you've got, okay, Luke's got a field trip tomorrow at 2:00. What time do I need to get there? Because I'm a chaperone. Why have we got to make his lunch in the morning? He wants the crust cut off his bread. We don't have the bread that he likes. What are we going to do? I might have to run to the grocery store. Lucy's getting potty trained, but I need to make sure there's extra pull-ups in her deal in case she has an accident at school, blah, 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 blah. So you have 9 different windows or more sometimes, all going on in your head at the same time. So we see it. I'm seeing a bunch of hearts. So there's people that can relate to this, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things the book gives reference to is, as men, one of the things that we can do is help our women close their windows. And once those windows are closed, then they can focus full screen on the sex window. If that's the one that we're supposed to focus on that night, right? So it gives reference and helps us communicate. So there's sometimes when we go to bed and Allie has said things throughout the day, because here's what happens as men. I'm sure this happens to not just me, right? So in the mornings, you're like, hey, babe, it's been a couple days. Tonight, you want to, and then she'll say, yeah, absolutely. Because she's not saying it, she doesn't mean it. She really does want to. Like, she enjoys sex. I enjoy sex. I think about it a lot more, obviously. But she says, okay, and she agrees to it. Well, then that night, a million things have happened between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., right? And so all these things are still going on in her head. So sometimes she'll say, hey, I know we talked about this morning, and I do want to, but I've got windows open. And she'll say it just like that.
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay.
It's just good language.
How can I help you close them? And she'll say, okay, tomorrow, Wyatt's lunch. And I'll say, well, let's do this instead. And she'll say, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's great. So boom, she closes that window.
And it'll even be stuff like, okay, I'm worried about this, or I can't stop thinking about this, or I don't know what to do about this. Even sometimes things that are like, may take a little bit of time for him to help me process through. But if nothing else, he can at least even say, okay, I think I have some ideas on that. Can you just can we make a note and talk about it tomorrow at lunch? Let's go to lunch. We can talk about this.
Sometimes she'll literally get her calendar out and go, boom, okay, we'll talk about it at lunch. And then done, boom, that window's closed. So it's just one more thing that these books do to give us context, and it's really changed the way we communicate throughout the day. Like sometimes there'll be times at dinner, we'll be washing dishes or doing something, and she'll say, hey, I've got some windows open. I'm like, okay, what you got? And so it's just a way for me to alleviate some of her mental strain, because that's one of her biggest things. Sometimes she overthinks things or things get in her head. And in our marriage, it's been something that we've battled constantly. And where I'm a guy, like I said, I'm full windows all the time. I'm either going to figure it out right now, or I'm going to put it on the calendar for tomorrow. So if she throws that out, like, hey, I've got some windows open I need help with, for one, it validates me and allows me to speak in, because sometimes the answer to her problems seems really easy for me, where it's something she's battled for a while. And I can say, no, babe, that was your gut instinct. That's what you need to go with. And she'll say, okay, yeah, I just need to hear it from someone else. So it just gives us a language that we didn't have prior. And it's helped not just when it comes to sex, but it's helped in so many ways in our marriage.
Yeah, for sure. If you're just joining us, we're talking about some books called, if you look
the
up
box
on
set
Amazon.
is called For Couples Only.
So I'm just going to pull it up on Amazon right now.
The books are called For Men Only and For Women Only. You'll see them, I think last time I looked, the individual books were $9 or $10 a piece, but you can buy the box set for like $13. So
no, it's $16.82 for the.
It's gone up then.
For Couples Only.
So on Prime it's $16.82.
Yeah, if you buy it on Amazon.
But if you buy them individually, it look like they were $12. So they've gone up.
Yeah.
We've told too many people about them.
There you go. I just put the link in the comments.
But search through. There's used copies you can buy. I mean, there's all kinds of. We have Amazon Prime, so we usually just default to buying it from the author in Prime. But you can go to your local bookstore. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways you can find it. It's out there.
Yeah. So those are the books we're talking about. I saw some of you mention that you have notepads by your bed. I do that too. The other thing that I do that's weird, sort of, and Angie, my cleaning lady, knows this, is I write myself notes on my mirror in my bathroom, because usually like that's when I start thinking. Like I have the best ideas like right out of the shower, or like when I'm brushing my teeth, right? Like random, when you stop thinking for a minute, or like when you like let yourself think for a minute. So I write on my bathroom mirror in a dry erase marker all the time. And sweet Angie will come. Can we leave your notes on the mirror? I'm like, yes, please. She's like, okay, great. So that's helpful too.
Let's start talking about this.
This?
Yeah.
So I want to actually go to.
You can talk about that again.
So we had some I asked if you guys had questions about this topic, and I only looked at the ones on Instagram. So I'm sorry if you asked me a question on Facebook. Maybe that's something we'll go through and answer more questions. I don't even know if you asked questions. I didn't check Facebook, but I did have some questions on Instagram, and one of them was, how do you get intimate in the bedroom if your intimacy outside the bedroom isn't healthy? So that's one question about what we're about to talk about. And then the other one is, how do you build the desire for sex even when my needs are not being met emotionally? So one of the things that we have found, and one of the things when we do our dream retreats and we meet with couples and we talk about a lot, are love languages. We do not all feel love and receive love the same way. And often what we do is the way that we most feel loved is the way that we give love. But very rarely are two couples in a marriage, are their love languages the same. So there is a book that's been around for a gazillion years called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And there is a free test.
Real quick though, if you're familiar with love languages and you've maybe even taken the test and you know what your love languages are, throw up a heart or a thumbs up or something. I just want to kind of gauge how many people know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We'll continue to talk about it, but I just kind of want to see. So what she said, Gary Chapman, 5 love languages, been up forever.
Yeah, so there's a free test online that you can take. It literally takes minutes to take.
Yeah, maybe 10 minutes.
Less, I think. It tells you what your love languages are, the ways that you feel the most loved. It's something really helpful for you to do as a couple. And if you haven't done it in a while, maybe you did it years and years ago, it's helpful to do it again, because
it can actually change.
It actually can change. Yeah. So
now I think if you know what your love languages are, rarely will they ever completely flip. But what we found happens is where your needs are being met most, sometimes your number comes down. So for those of you that are familiar, I think it's on a 25-point scale and there's 5 topics. Anyway, you'll be like a 10 in something because it's like, I'm a 10 touch. I need physical touch all the time. When she's touching me and scratching my back and, giving me a hug in the morning and all those things, I feel most loved that way. She's a words of affirmation and acts of service. So when I'm telling her she's beautiful and washing the dishes for her and doing those kinds of things, that's how she feels most loved. And quality time. Her top 3 are very close. And then your bottom ones sometimes will have really low numbers, sometimes even 0. But like my gifts is a 1. So if you buy me a gift, now granted, if it's a very well thought out gift, I still really appreciate it. But if she buys me something instead of, like, I would rather have a hug from her than her to buy me a gift. Gifts to me just aren't that big of a deal. So it's really cool to know your love languages. The issue is kind of like what she hit on for a second. The way you feel love is often the way you express love. So I'm a toucher. Like, I scratch her back, I give her hugs, I do all this stuff because I feel like that's how I can show her love. But touch to her is like number 4 out of 5 on the list. So she doesn't receive love the same way.
Well, and oftentimes, especially when my babies were young, I was home all day with babies and I was nursing babies and my babies they have almost always.
She was getting touched constantly.
Like, the last thing I want you to do is touch me. You know what I want you to do? I want you to take these babies and I want you to leave me alone.
Yeah. Take me to the other room. Let me get in the bath where no one's crying on me.
So, I need some alone time.
So by knowing each other's love languages and knowing how you can serve your spouse, it changes everything.
It really does.
Because if we've had people come to our retreats, sit in our living room, we've done love languages, we start talking about it, and they've been married for 10 or 15 years, and they'll sit there and go, oh my gosh, like, I'm physical touch, your gifts, or I'm physical touch, your words of affirmation, or whatever the couple might be. And they'll say, but I never buy you gifts because gifts are so low on my list.
Yeah.
And I know you appreciate them, but I just never realized they mean so much more to you than they do me. And so, I mean, sometimes when you both sit down and take the test and then really look at it and see the ways that you can love your spouse and appreciate your spouse, that by itself sometimes can completely change the ballgame in so many areas, including sex. But that can be a huge eye-opening moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do recommend do it again. Even if you've done it, do it again, because it could change. When she took it this last time, her touch actually went up 4 or 5 points because we haven't had infants. You know, we have a 3-year-old, but we haven't had infants, breastfeeding babies, all the things that were on her all the time. So now she actually appreciates touch more than she did the last time.
But it's interesting because I also know that touch is his number 1. And so I know that if there isn't physical touch between the two of us, that we're off. Like, that something
if I'm not touching her
off with us,
even though it's not her love language,
right?
She knows that my buckets aren't being filled because I'm not doing it to express love to her. So.
Yes, and that's really true. You not touching me is a pretty key indicator that something's wrong. That I'm not doing what he needs.
Well,
right.
Like this week, I've been sick. And I can tell. Like, I can tell she's noticed I haven't touched her as much, but I haven't felt great. So, you know, it comes in seasons.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting. Now, here's the thing. Ideally, this is a conversation you have with your spouse. These are tests you take together. You have a conversation about, hey, okay, if your love language is words of affirmation, give me some examples of things I can say to you that make you feel loved that way.
And it's going to feel silly sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, when you're sitting down telling your spouse the kind of things you need to hear, it seems really silly. And it seems like, especially if you've been married a long time, like when we first started diving into this, we've been married 8 or 9 years. And so it felt really unnatural for me to sit down and explain to her the ways I need to feel loved, because I feel like she should know.
Yeah.
And she felt the same way. But I promise you, if you do it just in a non-judgmental way, you sit down and just say, hey, let's learn this. Let's figure it. Like, I want to know you better. I want to love you better. I want to serve you better. What are some of the ways? And sometimes it's hard to come up with examples, but then as you start talking about it, you end up landing on the things that are actually true about each other.
I want to talk about a couple other things.
Well, real quick, can we have them write down these things so they can be kind of thinking through them as we do it, and then they can grade themselves on it?
Yeah, or I can type them in the comments.
Okay, whichever way. Talk about this though, and then we'll go to that.
So some of the questions we got over on Instagram, one of them was can you talk about birth control and its effect on your desire and your drive? Now, obviously, all women are different, but anything that you are putting into your body that is not naturally there can absolutely affect your sex drive. And oftentimes, things that are not being produced in your body that you need will also affect your sex drive. So when you get your ovaries taken out, you get to learn a lot about hormones. Now, long before I got my ovaries taken out, after we had our second baby, I went back on birth control, and I was so my sex drive was so non-existent that I decided it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Like that it just was not worth it for me to be on birth control because of what it did to our sex life, because it wasn't like that it was zero. It was like that it was negative. And that's not how I felt. Like when I wasn't on birth control, that's not how I felt.
Which even though I knew that was the reason,
it
affected me in a lot of ways because, men are told this lie their whole life about, well, if you're sexy and you're hot and you're working out and doing all the stuff, your wife's going to be turned on to you and blah, blah, blah. Well, when you're putting chemicals into your body, sometimes it can affect them in an adverse way where they don't want it. And it's not their fault. It's just how it's affecting them. And so it really affected our marriage to a point where we had the conversation about it. And she goes, I think I'm going to get off birth control. Well, whoa, hold on. We don't want any more kids right now. Why are you doing that? Well, what are some other ways we can avoid having kids without you being on it? And so we started to have those conversations.
And there are other options. So that's one thing I would suggest. If birth control is something that's really altering your sex drive, I would talk to your doctor about it. There are other options that are low hormone. They're not. You just have to find what's best for you, and you have to know.
Our 9-year-old or 11-year-old just walked through. So we had to PG it for a minute.
Oh, but we do and we don't.
Well, so we've had the sex conversation with her, but
yeah. So
can't go into So mom and dad that she loves very dearly. She don't want to hear too many details about it, so she locked her down. So just kind of a fun.
I would definitely say it is always worth looking into other options when it comes to birth control. 100%. It is not worth you not wanting to be intimate. Sex is such a gift, and that can hugely affect your sex drive and your sex life in general. Speaking of kids, there are some incredible books called God's Design for Sex that are.
Well, real quick, if you have any kid above the age of 5 or 6 years old,
yes,
right now, even all the way up into their teens or later, write it down. God's Design for Sex.
Yes.
Incredible books.
I'm going to try to link it.
I'll give you guys a quick example. If you guys know me, I'm kind of a smart ass. I'm a guy that, I'm sarcastic and all the things. Well, it's a book that basically gives you a commentary as to how to have that healthy,
you can get all of them now.
Christian-based conversation with your kids. So our daughter's 11. We've been having that conversation with her. We're reading through these books. There's this one part. I'll give you a brief example. There's one part that says, God designed sex so that mom and dad can have a baby like we had you, and yada, yada, yada. Well, then they're reading along, and then it gives them a question to ask that kids would probably naturally want to ask anyway, but this gives reference to it and gives them a reason to ask. And it says right here, ask your dad if sex is only for having children. So Addie, our 10-year-old at the time, asked me that. Well, Dad, so do you only have sex when you want to have a baby? If I don't have this book in front of me and I'm left to answer that on my own,
it's not going to be good, y'all.
It's not going to be good. Because either I'm going to go down the sarcastic route of hey, you ever seen your mama naked? No, I'm going to, that's not the way we're supposed to do it with our 10-year-old daughter. Mm-hmm. So I look down thinking oh God, please give me the right thing to say. And it says, God designed sex to be an incredible tool for your parents to continue to grow their love for each other throughout their entire lives. That way they can not only care for each other, but care for you in the best way possible, in the way that God designed your family to be. So that's why they, and then ... yada, yada. And so I was like, oh, thank God it gave me this incredible answer. And it's true. I mean, that is actually why God created sex, for us to continue to grow our love throughout our marriage, even when we're not trying to have children. But if any of your husbands or any of you guys watching are like me, that answer could have gone a completely other way. So it's really good that it didn't, for, the sake of my then 10-year-old daughter. But those books are incredible. They just give a really incredible biblically based reference to what sex is. And it also talks about it in a healthy, life-giving way, as opposed to the way that all of our parents talked about sex growing up. Like, you better not do it. If I find out you got to grow pregnant, I'm going to cut your balls off. You good, blah, blah, blah. All the things that we hear from our teachers and pastors and youth leaders and parents. And no, my dad was always pretty nonchalant about it. Like, it wasn't ever a big hot topic. But I will say this real quick, side note. My mom was the home ec teacher at our high school, one of the home ec teachers. And she was the one, I think our junior in high school, you have to watch the STD videos.
In your mom's class?
Yeah, but my mom brought them home my freshman year and said, you're going to watch these.
Yeah, she did.
So I watched, and this is part of that. And it's not faulting her at all. Like, in the era that I grew up in and that she grew up in, yeah, parents had to instill this fear. So I have to watch. I'm like a freshman in high school, and I'm watching these pictures of like what VD and syphilis and gonorrhea and genital warts and all those things will do to a man's penis. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to put that thing anywhere. I'm actually going to wear rubber gloves when I hold it to pee because I'm so scared something's going to latch onto it, never let go. And this thing's going to fall off before I ever get to use it for anything fun in my entire life. So, but that's just that era, right? The era of like, and we default to that sometimes as parents, like to try to scare our kids. So the incredible thing about this book, it gives a very life-giving reference to what sex is supposed to be within marriage and why it's harmful if it's handled irresponsibly outside of marriage.
Also, if you don't think you need to talk to your kids about sex, did you know that the average age that kids see porn now is 9 years old?
9 years old, people.
9 years old.
9 years old. It's come down.
I was in high school.
4 years or 5 years in the last
on the
decade
back of a bus
because of these
the magazine.
Because of smartphones, kids in middle school and elementary school now are accessing bad pictures and pornography and all the things. And so it's never a bad time. These books actually, they have age appropriate books starting from what, like 4 or 5 years old? 2 years old, where it even talks about just
where babies come
what
from,
our body parts are and what they should be called, and all of those things.
Anyways, a little bit of a tangent, but not really important things to say. Another thing when it comes to not just birth control, but hormones in general. So the more you get your ovaries taken out, guess what? You have to figure out the hormone game.
We learned a lot about the hormone stuff in the last year.
The hormone stuff.
More than we ever thought we would know.
First of all, as a woman, your body needs estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And if you're healthy, your body should be making those things. However, those hormones fluctuate depending on your time of the month, depending on if you just had a baby, depending on if you're nursing, depending on if you're stressed. Your body will actually take the testosterone that it's making, and your body needs testosterone to process estrogen. It will take the testosterone that it's making and use it in other places if your body is stressed or depleted in some area. So you want to think about the fact that sometimes you don't have a sex drive. It might very much have to do with your hormones, and or I saw somebody talk about your thyroid, absolutely, and or your thyroid. Now, the thing that we didn't know is that there are really great resources out there. The problem is I don't have a place to point you all. If you're local and you live in Oklahoma City, I have a great place to point you. But we went to
it's hormone therapy, basically.
Yeah, we went. Yeah. I mean,
if you look up, isn't it just called HRT, hormone replacement therapy?
I guess so. I don't know.
So if you look up hormone replacement therapy, obviously the default thought is for women that have their ovaries taken out, women that surgically go through menopause, or women that are going through menopause. However, after talking to Allison's nurse practitioner, the one that specializes in this, it's actually probably half of her patients aren't actually in hormone replacement therapy because of surgical menopause or menopause, but because of all the junk that we consume every day, processed foods, all of this stuff, it's actually throwing a lot of people's hormones out of balance that we weren't ever designed to consume a lot of these things.
Well, and it's stress too. So it's stress, it's the crap that we're putting in our bodies, it's the lack of care that we're taking of ourselves, and just honestly, just the culture that we live in and the things that we're eating.
Right.
And it's absolutely changing things about the way your body is functioning, working. And that goes all the way to cellular level of your hormones and everything that's happening there. And so we went to a hormone replacement therapist. The great thing, and I would find one that does a full lab workup if this is something you think, okay, maybe there is something off with my hormones. I went in and did she does a full lab. It is not cheap, but I will tell you.
It's $300 to $500 to initially go in and have a full workup done, and you have two different for our nurse practitioner that did it. And we always say she's a doctor. She's a nurse practitioner, but she specializes in this and has studied this for over a decade. So she's way more advanced in her knowledge base versus most OBGYNs or the doctors that typically prescribe hormone replacement drugs. So you go in and have this full workup, and she basically has an hour counseling session on the front end about all the different things that you feel and why you don't feel right in these areas and that. And then after she does the workup, you sit down and have another one, and she shows you all the areas that you may or may not need to be deficient, the reasons as to why, the different allergies you might have, to different types of food and products, and then how you can kind of adjust and take, different multivitamins and things to start to adjust some of those things.
The thing is, our bodies are amazing, but we are tearing them into the ground. For one, overwork. And I know that some of you are like, well, I don't work. I don't care if you work or not. The way that social media and the way our phones are invading our lives is overwork. It doesn't matter if you have a job or not. There's so many factors that go into that. And all of that relates back to the way that you feel and the way your body functions, and then ultimately affects your marriage and your sex life.
Right.
So that's the thing that's worth fighting for and looking into. So it might be something that you need to have checked and looked into. We are both on hormones, both of us. And it's something we tell people all the time, because I think there's this faux pas of like, well, you shouldn't need to be on anything. Well, the reality is.
Well, and just the education of it. Like, I learned that I have a slight allergy to, not slight, it's actually affecting my liver function and some other things, but to white processed flours. So white breads, tortillas, like anything like that. I don't need to go gluten-free, and I don't need to do all of that. But she was able to break down, because of this, look at this liver count score, this. And these are why you're tired all the time. And these are why, and so they're just able to really break it down, and you're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Yes, because of this and because of this. And then as you start to, so there's 4 or 5 different supplements that I'm on. And because of those, when I take them and I'm taking them regularly, I feel like a new man. Like, it's just a totally different, hers obviously because of her surgical removal of her ovaries and all of that. There were some obvious things that she needed to take immediately. And then the adjustment for those over the next 6 or 8 months look different, for women sometimes than they do for men. But any way that you can go in and just really start to see how different foods affect you, your diet, your exercising, your stress levels. She was able to, it's funny, there's a certain, it's a keratin or something, but there's something in your blood that she's able to tell you how high your stress level is based on this one count. And it was dead on accurate for both of us. She just looked at it and she was like, wow, I can tell you're stressed out. She was like, you're a, 8 out of 10, blah, 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 blah. And Allie was like, yeah, that's exactly accurate. So it's just pretty incredible. Like, your blood and all the things that go along with it tell so much about how you function on a day-to-day basis. And they're able, someone that's really educated in it is able to look at all that and really see, and then be able to tell you the things that you may or may not need to take, or the things that you do or don't need to be doing on a daily basis to help those.
Yes. Tammy said adrenal fatigue levels. Yes. Yeah. Somebody said, was she functional medicine? Yeah. Yes. She's not like, yes, it's functional medicine. Right?
No, I know what both those words mean individually, but together, am I putting it together right?
She's a nurse practitioner. So she can prescribe medication. They
can administer medication.
But they do a lot of diet, exercise, looking at the whole person, and lots of supplements. And then
it's what you would call holistic medicine, probably. But when I hear holistic, I think about like, voodoo and candles and all these weird. I mean, she looks at it, tells you where you're deficient. She looks at your diet, looks at your day-to-day, tells you how you need to adjust. It's incredible. All right, so let's get off you've heard our piece on that.
Yes.
Here's 5 things. Here's what we want you guys to do real quick. Allie's going to put them in the notes while I'm telling you about them, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to put them in the notes.
She's going to put these 5 things in the notes, and I'm going to tell them to you. If you would rather write them down, you're welcome to do that. But here's a gauge. We'll call it the sex scale, okay?
Sex scale.
The sex scale evaluation. So write these 5 things down, and what we want you to do is we want you to rate yourself 1 to 10 after you write them down. Don't do them while you're writing them, but after you write them, think through them, and then you can grade yourself on them. So number 1 on the sex scale is...
What's 1 and what's 10?
I'm going to explain that afterward, like I just said.
My bad.
So number 1 is communication about sex with your spouse. The conversations you guys have, do you openly talk about it? Is it a narrative that's constantly ongoing about your sex life in a positive way, not a negative, like him throwing out, well, you haven't had sex with me in a week, and her saying, yeah, well, you haven't made me want to have sex with you for a week. So, 1 to 10, 1 being we're not very healthy in that area. We don't communicate very often. 10 being we talk about it all the time. We're super healthy when it comes to communication about our sex life. 1 to 10. Number 2, are you meeting your spouse's needs in their love languages? So obviously, if you don't know your spouse's love language, or your spouse, hasn't taken that test, I would say don't jump to conclusions to automatically think he's a man, he must want touch. What we have found is that is not always the case. Actually, probably only 50% of men is touch their number one love language. Some men that we've met, it's their lowest one. So whatever it might be, if you don't know your spouse's love language, before you can even grade yourself on this scale, you need to have them take that test. So number 2 was, are you meeting your spouse's needs in their love languages? Number 3 is, are your needs being met in your love languages? So now hopefully, I think Allie in the teaser today put, watch this with your spouse. So we want you guys to answer these individually. So as a husband, are you meeting your needs in your spouse's love languages? You're asking that about, are you meeting your wife's? And as a husband, are your needs being met via your love languages? You're answering that, is your wife meeting those needs? Again, you have to take the love language test, and they're free online. You can literally Google it. It's free online. But you're asking those of yourself. So you're each going to take this test individually. Number 4, how well do you date and make time for your spouse? So we're big advocates on dating your spouse. We believe we have a date night every single week. Some nights it's a date night in. We put the kids to bed. We stay up. Sometimes we'll eat dinner at the table with the kids. We'll just lightly eat. And then after we put the kids to bed, we'll actually cook dinner together. We love to cook. We might just make a, meat and cheese tray, or we'll do something fun and something light. But sometimes we'll cook together and actually sit down and have a glass of wine and have a date. We call it a stay date, but a date night in. How well do you think you date or make time for your spouse? Do you have a dedicated date night every month or twice a month? Do y'all get away 4 or 5 times a year? So 1 to 10, 1 being we absolutely do not date like we should. 10 being, oh my gosh, we go on a date every week. Our dating life's incredible. We're keeping hope alive in that way. That's number 4. Number 5, how pleased are you with your sex life? This is a little easier. 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely not pleased at all. 10 being, we're hanging from the chandeliers and it's incredible. So probably a bad reference. It's a guy reference, sorry. But how pleased are you with your sex life? 1 to 10, 1, not at all. 5, it's okay, pretty good, could be better. 10, it's excellent. And so as you go through these, I'll run through them really quick one more time so you can check your list, because I know someone's going to say, what was 4 again? Oh, you do? Okay. Yep. Just go through and grade yourself in all those areas. And I'm telling you right now, if your score is not above probably a 30 or a 35 out of 50, then there's plenty of room for improvement. So there's a lot of hope. The good news is there's a lot of ways that you could get better introspectively, and your spouse probably can as well. And then together as a couple, excuse me, that you guys could get a lot better. And there's might be 1 or 2 of those areas where you're going to score really, really low. And there might be some other areas that you score really high. So you can look at those low areas and think, wow, we have so much room for improvement. But do that. And then as we finish up here, let that be a conversation that you have with your spouse. And we're at, I don't even know how to tell. We're at minute 53 essentially. So women, if you need to fast forward your men to 53 so they can hear this part right here, do this. Guys, I'm talking just to you. Do this for your spouse. There's a couple of books. There's a couple of small tests that you can take online. Get on and do them. I promise, no matter how much you're resenting your spouse right now because of their lack of want of you, or how you feel disrespected maybe by your spouse, or you don't feel like they're filling your buckets in all the way that they should, and that's causing you to look other places or fantasize about other things, or maybe to go places that you shouldn't as a dedicated spouse, but because you don't feel like your needs are being met in this marital relationship, it's causing you to look other places. Hopefully you haven't acted on any of those thoughts. Hopefully you haven't already done anything that's going to be possibly detrimental to your marriage. But even if you have, we believe in a God that is a forgiving God that can look past mistakes and that can build you guys together better in the future than you've ever been before in the past. So if there is something that you've done or something that you maybe didn't want to do, but it just happened because you don't feel like your needs are being met, walk through this with your spouse and be open, just hands open to what might get communicated to you, what God might want to do in your marriage, because we're big believers. If God's brought you together, there's a reason. What God brings together, let no man break and let no man take apart. And I honestly believe if you lean into your spouse, do your love languages, read these books that we've recommended multiple times tonight, and really, really lean into that you guys can have the best possible marriage, the best possible sex life, and really have the most fruitful marriage and relationship that you've maybe ever had in your life.
Also, maybe we should talk about how freaking awesome sex can be too.
You want to close with that?
Not right now, but one day.
But here's what's funny. We talked about sex tonight. We didn't actually talk a lot about sex itself.
We didn't. We talked about a lot of the things that prevent sex. Right. Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean,
yeah.
The actual act of sex is actually the I don't want to put a time on it because then it makes if you say the 3-minute act of sex or if you say the 30-minute act of sex, it's two totally different. But the actual act of sex itself is actually in the 12 hours before, the 24 hours before, the 48 hours before leading up to it, because the actual act of sex itself, the actual just physical act of sex for men is different than women, but for women especially, the lead up to it is so much more important than the actual act itself.
Yeah.
So
I want to tell them about Mexico.
Okay. This will be a good one to end it on.
If you're a parent, this is when you should leave.
Yep. Grandma, check out.
So for one, there's another book we talk a lot about called Love and Respect, and how my job as a spouse is to respect him. He wants respect more than he wants love, and I want love and adoration more than I want respect. I mean, I want to be respected, obviously, but I want to feel loved, and I want to feel fought for, and I want to feel adored, and all the things, right? So we went to Mexico. This was, I don't know when it was, last year.
No, it was before that. It was like February 17.
So we went to Mexico, and I didn't know this, but Brian's entire goal in this trip was to make me feel adored. Like, literally his whole goal was to make me feel adored. And so it was like him speaking my love languages on steroids.
Well, and preface that. So this book, Love and Respect, I listened to it on Audible. It basically just talks about, as men, our job is to adore and pursue our bride. We have I think they say beauty in the book. They say we need to pursue our beauty for our entire life. And then our beauty's job to us is to respect us and, validate us constantly and affirm us and all of that. And I've had people read it and they were like, it's so traditional. And it's so, it's worked for thousands of years. So it is what it is. But it is a very biblical reference to what we are called to do as spouses within a relationship. So I read the part where he talks about adoring your spouse, and the word adoration is so much more intimate than the word love. Like, I read a thing the other day that said the Greeks would be ashamed of us that we say I love you to our spouse the same way we say it to our mother or our friend. The Greeks had 6 different words for love. It's a whole nother thing. But the word love kind of gets old sometimes, right? Like, I love you, babe. Oh, love you too. I mean, it does mean that I love her and I do love her, but it kind of over time starts to wear thin. Like in a fight, when you're mad, you're walking out the door, but you're supposed to say, you say, all right, well, I love you. All right, love you too. And you can leave.
That's true.
And it doesn't have the same meaning, right? But the word adoration, when you adore your spouse, there's no room for negative in that. You can't be mad at your spouse when you're adoring them, when you're giving them adoration. So this word really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
So we were about to go to Mexico, and I didn't even tell her, but I just was like, okay, my one goal, and really leading up to this trip, we'd had some issues and some fights, and we were going, she was going through surgeries and was having some body image issues, and all this stuff was going on. And I just said, I'm going to adore the crap out of her all week. And I'm not going to tell her I'm doing it, but I'm literally going to do everything I can to just adore her as much as I can. And so that's the backstory.
So we go to Mexico, and I don't know this, but my computer's about to die.
2%.
I got to tell the story fast. I don't know that that's his plan. And so day one, I'm like, what is up with him? What is he doing? He was writing me notes, letting me sleep in. He knows I love my introvert time, my introvert sleep time, going to get coffee for me. and then writing me these notes that made me feel like the most beautiful woman on the planet. And the backstory to that is I had been through, at this point, 3 different surgeries, all reconstructive in nature. And I didn't feel good about the way that I looked. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I I, I totally. I mean, I was trying to figure out this is the new me, and how to like how does that feel? How do I feel about that? We're at 1%, man. um, and it was hard, and I wasn't confident, and I didn't feel confident. Well, he had bought this like string bikini for me that I would not wear like on a normal basis. Oh, down to the wire, plug it in. And I told him I'll take it, but I'm not going to wear this. Like I'm not going to wear. I am not in the right shape to wear this. Like I'm not going to wear this. Well, what's funny is he made me feel like I was the sexiest woman on this beach. I mean, I felt, and I don't even know, like, I just felt hot. Like, I felt like I was smoking hot. Like, all of a sudden, there was this confidence in me, and I was like, heck yeah. And he's like, are you gonna wear the white bathing suit? And I'm like, you know it. I'm totally wearing it, totally rocking it. And I walked the beach in that bathing suit like it was made for me. Like I was owning it. And he's taking pictures of me like on the beach, like, doing all the things. And I left that trip feeling loved, adored. Also, we had a crap ton of sex because
By the end of the week, I had to tell her to stop. True story.
I just
She was like, "You wuss your." I was like, "Babe,
because I
you wore me
felt
out."
like he made me feel just adored. Like I don't even know how else to explain it. But here's the crazy part about all of it. I really, really believed. He had me believing that, women, like when you look in the mirror and what you see, you know how distorted our view is of ourselves anyways. Like we look at, all we can see is the bad. Like we critique ourselves to it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I wear this white bathing suit. He takes pictures of me in it. And granted, he took some great pictures when I'm laying out on a beach, like on a, when I like kind of, I'm like, okay, now I do look hot in that picture. But, cause you're completely horizontal and there's like,
No belly and
that's
no,
fine.
yeah.
But there's pictures of me walking the beach that later I saw and I was like, hold up. This is what I look like in a swimsuit.
And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, "Babe, that is not.
I shouldn't have been wearing that.
You
Like,
should not have let me wear that." And I'm like, "Babe, no. What I see is what I told you I was seeing, but what you see is distorted." So,
but that's
the
exactly
story.
like but I started to truly like, you just spoke so much truth and life into me that I sort of did at the end of the week feel like, not at the end of the week. It was like a couple weeks later when I really looked back at those pictures and I was like, what? Like you feel like the girl at American Idol that they're like, honey, you can't sing. And their parents.
Everyone my whole life has told me I can sing.
I can be a
What?
supermodel.
Yeah.
Like that's what I felt like, and I show up to what's that runway show? They're like, baby, no.
But the point of all of it was that, and I didn't go into the week hoping to get all the sex and all the stuff out of it. I just really wanted to make her feel like adored and loved and cared for, like I'm called to do as a husband and as a Christ follower. And it worked, and it showed me within days that if I continue to do that in our marriage, continue to lift her up and adore her for the queen that she is, that I end up getting everything I want also. So now I don't say that to say do it so you can get everything you want. Do it because that's what she deserves.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if I'm filling her buckets with words of affirmation and acts of service and showing her the princess that she is in our marriage, then she's going to allow me to be the man that I need to be as well, and going to love me and respect me and fill my buckets as well. So somebody said earlier, a comment, I'm going to botch it, but they said something about, I wish my husband understood this. Well, a lot of times, and this is not popular when we say this, but a lot of times you have to serve them in the way that you're supposed to serve them with no ulterior motive of how they're going to then in turn treat you. I mean, we are ultimately called to serve our spouses like Christ served the church And when we're doing that, we all know that it's going to come full circle back to us, but you can't go in with the intention. You can't, it's kind of like we tell people, you can't give with the hope that you're going to get. Mm-hmm. You have to give with open hands and an open heart and just say, I'm going to give this. And if I never see anything on the other side of it, I know God saw it and I know that it's going to be blessed, but I don't have to see the fruits of it on this side of heaven, right? And so you've got to serve your spouse in that way. You have to serve, even when you're frustrated, even when they're not doing what you feel like they're supposed to be doing, you have to serve them in a way that's just open-handed. I'm going to serve them within their love languages and within I know how I'm supposed to serve them. And pray for them constantly, lean into their love languages, do all the things you think you're supposed to do and know you're supposed to do to serve them. And then the rest of it, I promise you, will take care of itself. But don't quit when it starts to come around. Like, just continue to pour into that, and you'll have a better marriage than you've ever had.
So some of you, to close, some of you women that are watching and you're thinking, I wish that our marriage were better. And I wish that my husband treated me like that. Look, part of it is you have a role to do too. And your role is, as a wife and as a woman, is to show respect to him. And I don't say that to say that, we should, bow to our men or this whole like feminism thing. That's not it. You are a strong and beautiful and powerful woman. And yes, you could live without him, but also you were created to be with him. And what you have in a covenant of marriage is strong and powerful. The strongest and most powerful thing we believe, that the kingdom of God has to use against the enemy. And because of that, it's the thing that the enemy comes after the most, especially if you're in a Christian marriage, because marriage is incredibly powerful. It doesn't change only two people. It changes legacies and generations. And as a wife, if you are not happy and you're in a marriage that's committed and loving, and, obviously if there's, what am I trying to say? What's the word?
Committed and loving.
Yeah, but if you're in a marriage where there's abuse of any kind, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if you're in a marriage where there's no abuse happening, but you're
and
not
abuse
happy,
can be so many things.
It can
verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse.
And verbal abuse is a thing. All of those things are things. But if you're in a marriage where you're just stagnant and stale and your spouse isn't being what you want him to be, it might be time to step up to the plate and be what he needs you to be for him.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. Coming up on Valentine's Day, we kind of make fun of Valentine's Day because gifts are so low on both of our scale. It's a made-up holiday, y'all. But here's the thing. If you're a gifts person or your spouse is a gifts person, if you don't get them something on Valentine's Day, you're going to wreck their world a little bit. So take this test before Valentine's Day, learn their love languages, but then try to give them a gift within those love languages. It doesn't have to be a physical gift. It doesn't have to be the diamond necklace if their gifts aren't high. If their things is words of affirmation or acts of service, figure out a way you can give them a gift that is within their love languages. And let's start this right now. Like, let Valentine's Day of 2019 be the time when you start to turn your marriage around. And women, it's okay for you. I know as men, we are called to be the spiritual leaders of our family, and we want to lead our families. But sometimes it takes a kick in the butt from our women to start to push us in the right direction. So if you're watching and your husband's not watching, if you can get him to watch it, great. But if you can't, you know what? It's okay. If he notices a difference in you, in the way that you treat him, in the way that you respect him, women, I know sometimes we don't earn the respect that we need from you. Yeah. But if you tell him, honey, I respect you. Like, I respect that you go to work every day. I know that you don't love your job. And I know that you would rather do something else or be with our kids more or whatever. But I love and respect the fact that you serve our family in that way. Sometimes speaking that life into your husband, and that might be something so foreign to you, you've never said that, or maybe you think you've said it, but you just need to take a stand and really say it and truly mean it and look into his eyes and say it one time. Just by taking that step, that might open him up to start allowing you to speak in and say, like, hey, can we watch this video together? Hey, can we read these books together? Hey, let's take our love languages test. Like, I want to know how I can love and appreciate you in the best way possible. And honestly, if your man is like me, that's kind of foreign, that's kind of cheesy, that's kind of voodoo, that's kind of, blah, blah, blah. I don't need all that. But just continue to lean in and love and appreciate him like you are called, and respect him like you're called to do. And I promise you, it'll soften their heart and it'll start to allow you to speak in to how you guys can have the best marriage possible.
So a lot of that starts with us as women. There's that saying that behind every great man is a great woman. And I believe that's true because I believe that we were created for each other, that we were created to stand behind and next to each other in different seasons. And it oftentimes takes a really strong woman to say, you know what, I'm going to do my part. Before he deserves it, before he's earned it, I'm going to show him the respect that he needs, that he is created to have. And I'm going to love him in that way by telling him how much I respect him, by showing him that I respect him, by biting my tongue sometimes, which is hard if you are stubborn to bite your tongue.
We're both stubborn.
But
we had to learn that lesson.
Marriage is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice and it's a choice. And every single day, you have to choose to love this person. And it's not like there was one person. It's not like you were made for one specific person. Every single day, you have to choose over and over again that you're going to love this person as much or more than you love yourself. You're going to choose them again and again. You're going to put their needs before yours. That's what marriage is.
Yeah.
And far too often, we are so consumed with what we're not getting and what we don't have and what we wish the other person did for us that we're not doing our part. And so maybe that's where you are today. Maybe it needs to start with you. Maybe you learned something new about the way men think about sex and the way women think about sex. Maybe you needed to hear that piece about maybe your hormones are all jacked up. There is always a step forward. And if anything, I hope that tonight you're taking a step forward into making your marriage and your sex life and all of the things that have to do with your marriage stronger, whatever that might look like for you. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Yep.
And we love y'all.
Yeah.
And that's all.
That's it.
I don't have any closing remarks.
Share the video and you'll be entered in the drawing for a set of books. And we might even, so there's another level to this that we didn't even get into tonight as far as once you start to do these things, different ways to, in a very healthy way, in a very respectful way, and all the things to start to grow your intimacy more and more. So we might even talk about that next week even more, because there's a whole nother level that we didn't even get to tonight. But I've seen some comments. Yes, if you're in an abusive relationship, like we said earlier, you absolutely need to seek some therapy and some counseling for that. If it's a physically or sexually abusive relationship, you absolutely need to seek law enforcement on that. That's something that I'm telling you right now. If you're in a physical abusive relationship, you fear your spouse, the physical harm, anything like that, I promise you, I know it seems extreme and it seems like right now that might tear us apart, or that might, make him more angry or whatever. You have to absolutely call the police and report if you're being abused. That's something that we have conversations pretty regularly with people at church about. It could hurt right now, as far as it could hurt you, it could tear you guys apart and all the things, but it forces you guys to take a turn for the better, or at that point, make some big decisions on what your future needs to look like. But if you in any way fear physical danger, anything like that, don't hear us saying, read these books and everything's going to be okay. If you're in physical harm or in harm's way at all, you need to seek law enforcement. And if it's emotional abuse or something you see as maybe verbal abuse, that's a conversation that can be had. And maybe through your church, maybe through a therapist or a counselor, you guys can start to seek healing in that way.
Yeah.
But that's not healthy either. And that's not, as a man, I'm telling you right now, if you're being emotionally or verbally abused by a man, that's not what God created us to be as husbands. And so as a woman, you can take the steps to try to change that. And if he doesn't follow and he's not willing to go along with you, you can continue to walk in that path by yourself. And eventually he'll either come around or you'll realize that that's not the place that you need to be. We do not condone, we're not big advocates for divorce. We believe that if God brought you together, that you can be healed from it, but we do truly feel like both of you have to be willing to be healed from it. Mm-hmm. And so if someone is not willing to take that step and not go down that path with you, then we absolutely do believe that there's biblical grounds for divorce. But again, that's something that you need to seek professional help on. We are not counselors. We are not therapists. We'll help in any way that we can, but we're just not qualified to give that kind of advice. But we love you guys. Thank you for spending that last hour and 15 minutes with us.
Yeah. Sorry, we talked so much. We could really talk so much more about sex too. That's crazy.
There's something about when we get around the table with people and we talk about sex, we've just found that it's this thing that people don't always talk about, but it can be one of the most incredible things in your life and one of the most incredible ways you can grow your marriage. And we just want that for everybody. So anyway, we're probably going to talk more about it next week.
I put a book in the comments that I want to mention really, really quickly. And one of my good friends that came to one of our dream retreats, one of our marriage retreats, she and I have been talking a lot about this book lately because in their strategy session, it was something that came up. And I had read this book and it was incredibly healing for me. There's a book called Enjoy. And I put the link in the comments, and I think it's actually called something about sexual pleasure of women. It's a Christian book. It's a biblically based book.
When I saw it on her nightstand, I was like, whoa, what are you reading? Yeah.
It's so good. It is so good. It talks about...
it's not smut.
It's not smut.
No.
You can get it on Amazon. No, it's not at all. But it's a biblically based perspective of what sex is supposed to be for women. And it talks a lot about if there was sexual abuse, if there was sex before marriage, if all of these things could hinder your positive relationship with sex now, how to start to heal from those things, how to work on your intimacy and becoming like all kinds of things. Anyways, it's amazing. I think it's called Enjoy the Gift of Sexual Pleasure for Women or something. I don't know.
You put the link.
If you
put the link in the comments.
It's a great, great, great resource that some of you might be looking for.
And I can advocate as her husband.
It's a great resource. Yeah. Even if you're not a Christian, I think you would benefit from it. It's a really great book. So anyways, hope you guys are having a great night. Sorry we kept you so long.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for trusting us. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Okay, bye.